fostering such engaging discussion, thought-provoking ideas, and the exchange of diverse perspectives. As we move ahead, we look forward to continuing this phase of intellectual exploration in the next session. We will now have our second plenary session for the day. We are honored to have with us such an esteemed plenary speaker, Dr. Shagata Bhaduri, professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Bhaduri is a prominent figure in English studies, specializing in literary theory and translation. Dr. Shagata Bhaduri is a professor at the Center for English Studies, School of Language, Literature and Cultural Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. With a distinguished academic background from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and Jawaharlal Nehru University, he specializes in colonial and literary history, contemporary literary and cultural theory, popular culture, and translation studies. He has held prestigious visiting professorships at institutions in France, Germany, and Poland, and has received numerous accolades, including the Jawaharlal Nehru Memorial Award. His extensive research, teaching, and publications contribute significantly to literary theory, cultural studies, and comparative literature. Before we invite Dr. Bhaduri to deliver his talk, I request the session rapporteur, Dr. Zohra Zubin, Head of the Department of English, Christ College, Cuttack, to kindly take her place on the stage. We also request Dr. Bhaduri to take up his seat. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Great honor, we invite Dr. Bhaduri to deliver his talk.
So first of all, I thank the organizers for thinking of me and inviting me. It's indeed a great pleasure to be amongst you and share some thoughts. The conference itself is on a very, very important topic, which is reimagining existence itself. And therefore, I would just like to share a few thoughts with you on what it might mean to reimagine existence in today's times. So to begin with, of course, the fundamental issue with which we must begin is that considering that we are apparently moving towards times that are being increasingly called post-humanistic, so to be a human being today, what we even consider existence itself today, that in itself therefore becomes the very kind of inquiry that is how do we imagine existing as human beings in times which are being seen as increasingly being post-humanistic. So that would be a starting point, so to say. But amongst many things, sorry.
No,
Sorry?
okay. Audible.
Okay. Is this better? Is it more audible now? Right. So just let me know if it's not audible. So I thought that maybe, I mean, one can think of what is fundamentally problematic, which is making us move towards a situation that may more progressively become post-humanistic. And to begin with, maybe what we can think of, and this I will begin my discussion there from, is probably the looming environmental crisis that we continuously find ourselves amidst, and which in a way would have probably made us in a way rethink our being humans, being human beings itself. So let me just begin with the concern that we may have for environment, and through which I would probably move into how human beings might have to reconceive and reimagine their existence in certain ways. See, talking about the environment itself, talking about environmental criticism itself, the initial point one can make is criticism or thinking of the environment and thinking of environmental issues and thinking of technological advances or general environmental crises which push human beings onto the very precipice of what their existence, their stately instant existence was like. So criticism of this might become the zero, the point of beginning, so to say. As we know, and women thinking this beauty and almost let's say key thought that move to Shirley Giffelty and her very introductory reader, so to say, into what necessarily is eco-criticism. So that would be fundamental entry point into my let's say, my general argument today. It's criticism at the end of the day. Because if that be horizon through which we try to look at the environment and what we may have been doing to the environment and generally try to reach our critical points into the environment, criticism is really the starting point for us, or even the point that we deal with. Understand that criticism ultimately always probably serves very fairly anthropic purpose. And I'll just elaborate it further because paradoxically, as much as we may in a very shallow hypothetical way, because in a minute I would probably move into the idea of deep ecology, and then through which one would move further into what indeed my discussion today would be. So I'm still at a regulatory mode at this moment. So as Cheryl Geffel would have argued, much like such movements, against such cultural or resistive movements, like be it feminism, be it post-colonialism, even environmental criticism, must be in terms of three stages. It is very akin, as we know, to Walter's feminine, feminist, and female phases. So we can consider three phases. And that necessarily creative, through nature, poetry, and such things, always illuminatory of nature came to the people criticism of the show guilty, but was very typical, it's a punter. So, I was hollow, very shallow, what really criticizes. And when you criticize, it cannot really move much into the issue at hand. And therefore, actually, Guilty argues that one has to move to the third stage. Usually, in the female phase, so to say, third stage, where one is moved in adulation of nature, uncritical adulation of nature, nor is one really critical, even these are the certain things that we have still hard to rather move to flexibility in wisdom from who we are. So, moment we only to be related to the environment or what is happening to the environment, to reach a stage, third stage, a mature stage, so to say, where somehow environmental wisdom is very term, how you think, how you are. It's that phase, and it was my slight preparatory detour, as I said, to tell you after two almost familiar ground, because all of you would know what exactly I'm talking about. It's this sort of phase that would make us move into philosophy or even into criticism. Because at the end of the day, and I'm just repeating myself, at the end of the day, you criticize something, and you kind of present yourself to be something, and it's only at the surface, at a very shallow level. See, if you hate this, Dan has been, then you want to criticize it, etc., etc. So it's serving and sure the purpose of saving the day. It's somehow doing some kind of patchwork, some kind of gaps that will emerge in your immediate context. And so you save the day, as it were, save the day of humanity, so to say. Whereas the moment we move on from criticism, in this hollow ecological sort, it is a key. That is environmental wisdom. Environmental consciousness is really just a fundamental critical tool. We straight on who we are, on how we think. We haven't moved on to ecological position. And whereas one deliberately in my recalling of shallow ecology and deep ecology, which obviously remind of MS, we would have absolutely not only the find the term deep ecology, suggested, and it is kind of debated, but it is suggested that maybe even ecosophy, the term ecosophy, was probably first used by Annes. But generally credited to Guattari, and I'll just move into Guattari in a minute. Ecosophy, I mean, it's more of a footnote really. So it is within the term ecosophy, it was framed by Guattari, Felix Guattari, or Annes. Besides the point, we would soon move into Guattari in a slightly detailed manner. Let me just settle down on Ness, who I am with at this point of time. Because Ness, while framing the term deep ecology, argues the vein that I have raised till now, which is shallow ecology. Shallow ecology of eco-criticism, but somehow we try to address a particular ethical issue. And it's a little bit environmental degradation, criticize the sources, we try to remediate, we try to do something with it. And not really what is fundamental. Is current environmental degradation, in which we need to kind of move from a deep ecological level, deep manner on the surface. Getting to deep ecology, and since one has already invoked the term ecology earlier, and in a way, by the person named Guattari, Felix Guattari, which is the right time for me with the actually comments out of my way to jump into what I indeed want to talk about, and not to show the abstract would have been circulated finally in any booklet. Still, one would probably know the exact skeletal structure of my talk. But now's the time for me to kind of jump in into symbolism work. I hope we spend some time on into the very meat, into the very sense of ecosophy. First of all, as I said, probably Guattari himself would have coined the term ecosophy, the whole idea of ecological wisdom. And in his three ecologies, the way he would have talked about synergizing three ecologies, that of the environment, the person, that of the individual, the subject, and that of society itself. But let us keep Guattari kind of on the side for the time being, and let us instead jump straight away into the idea of deep ecology, and therefore into the idea of two Deleuze and Guattari, into the idea of itself. Deep ecology, and that would kind of add a further layer to my discussion. When we talk about layers, when we talk about this, probably what we need to first look at. So my first initial foray into the topic that we're discussing today will be chapter 3 of Deleuze and Guattari's 1,000 Plateaus. And chapter 3, as we all know, is 10,000 BC, geology of morals, as we do know, quite a funny take on nature itself, and what do we think it is. So we are familiar perhaps with chapter 3 of 1,000 Plateaus, which is, and those are we can probably in the way I would elaborate what genuinely goes on there in a minute, that you would get familiarized with. So as far as 10,000 BC geology of morals, what does the world, when does the earth think it is, who does the earth think it is concerned, Deleuze and Guattari take recourse to this very interesting character who we do know, Professor the Challenger. You all do know Professor Challenger. So we do know that Arthur Conan Doyle, along with Sherlock Holmes, just like we are probably more familiar with Sherlock Holmes, but we do know that Conan Doyle, along with Sherlock Holmes, also had a mad scientist character, Professor Challenger. So let's say Shaptagitra has a has his Professor Shinku. Arthur Conan Doyle has his Sherlock Holmes, and the other one he has his Professor Challenger. So in the particular chapter that one is talking about in 1,000 Plateaus, which is chapter 3, somehow these and Guattari take recourse to Professor Challenger. Professor Challenger, the story significantly, understanding the story, or at least talking about the story, may really add further layers, and I'm using the word layers in a very, very self-conscious manner, layers to this model that one is talking about. It's the story of Professor Challenger, written by Arthur Conan Doyle, and which Deleuze and Guattari refer to. The work is themed. Read this particular story. If not, I would invite all of you, since every text is now available so readily, you can just Google Arthur Conan Doyle when the work is screen and read this fascinating story with some Professor Challenger, along with another character called Thomas Jones. You start digging into the earth in a deep way, digging into the layers of the earth. And as we go on digging and digging and digging further, literally, the earth kind of folds back, pain, almost having filtered the layers of the earth in deep way, realize that and replace with notorious things, absorbent gases, are really, really dangerous liquid, toxic liquid, it's really literally crying out loud. So we can to telling a story to how once you dig deep into the earth kind of replies back. The earth feels back. And it's like a sentient being. Because we realize that the earth is not really an it's mere fall. On the contrary, sentient being. We begin with see, perhaps by referring to chapter 3, because it's model the idea of digging deep into the layers. So, in a way, Earth's geology itself stands impacted. And the Earth kind of geological answers is more evident in chapter 3 of A Thousand Platters. And that's why I want to tell you, begin from there. So, nevertheless, what are you talking about? And as all of you who are fairly well informed into the general discussion and participating in would know, with analogy on the part of Balavan Gotari, the key of A Thousand Platters suggests is human beings not kind of hamper this of the earth. Human beings are actually intrinsically going back to the idea of shallow ecology versus deep ecology, the shallowness, the ephemerality, the ecosystem, versus the evolving wisdom, what we need to promote. Entirely imagine like who we are, kind of log into that, and hopefully the connection has not altogether been missed out upon. So what she realizes human beings have literally impacted the of the earth. Human beings, it's not some trees have been cut there, let's say canal has been dug there, some river has been dammed there. It's not really something that we have done only to surface. It's geological impact. One is says deep way into the earth. So this is the whole idea of deep ecology and what Balavan Gotari also would have been referring to. As we do understand, so there are human beings, geological force, not just an incidental force to this. An incidental force to incidentally kind of just do something at the surface level to the environment. Human beings have actually altered the geological nature of the earth. That's so. And as you already understand, the next move, so to say, in my discussion today is the idea of Anthropocene. Idea being, again, something that becomes really reimagining the human subject at this particular conference wants to do. Do you know what Anthropocene is? We do know that yes, it was geologically, it doesn't, it's stated geological age, but in a way, even Stoner and Hudson would have proposed, as we do understand, the suggestion is we still belong to the Holocene, more, let's say, technically speaking, more specifically, we belong to the as we do know, the Meghalaya age of the Holocene. There's been a speculative geological age which has been suggested, which is the Anthropocene. Suggestion being that we have probably moved to the geological era in the Anthropocene. These human beings, the anthropos, have the Earth's stuff. They have geological changes onto the Earth. Not a question of just altering what the is. In the atmosphere or in the absolute atmosphere for that matter, it's a geological impact. Ushering us into an altogether new geological age. Even Anthropocene, as we do know, connected, as well as be my third into another chapter of Balavan Gotari. Before we can slightly detour to be able to enter that particular chapter, what's been noted is Anthropocene. What to recognize on the one hand, humans are really bad beings. Humans have caused absolute damage to the earth. It's listening to the geological age, what is at the center of it. itself as Anthropocene, rather than always becoming the very agent of this geological disaster, namely the Anthropos. Irony. Mean image. Trying to quickly, in a very ecological way, scene. And still kind of Anthropos, very discredited human subject, has been mineral center. Particular geological age itself. It's a great problem. This particular ecological disaster, the geological disaster, the geological impact that the human subject has caused to the earth, human subject himself. And needless to say, therefore, if it's ultimately debates about when did the Anthropocene have begun. So I say that right from the last ice age, with the coming of agriculture, the land, the irrigation, certain things. So become even superior water channels come out for the sake of irrigation. Really had got in the Anthropocene. So it does not very much and so that no, it's what let's say the further you say years with industrial capitalism, it's when the Anthropocene came in. This would then suggest that in the age, perhaps, really the elements themselves stood altered through isotopes, with fission and fusion, we have even the nature of certain elements to decaying cultures. And Japan was started. Now, to take the first two points that I made just now, ultimately, plantations. It can be blamed. Plantations really were to the led to the Anthropocene, and capital would lead to the Anthropocene. And why use all terms? And this is where, Donna Harris steps in because she, in a very, very influential essay, Anthropocene, Plantationocene, Capitalocene, and then we'll refer to another word in a minute, Holocene, but we'll come to it in a minute. We want to suggest, okay, granted, understand ecologically, first, let's say human beings need to be able to taste with and to get the kind of really imagine our existence in its light. We need to do that. With a particular event horizon, we must mean a particular situation, anthropos. Ultimate plantations would have caused this particular geological change when all the Eocene. After it can be credited this point of that matter, to have breakthrough this particular deep ecological change, and how all the Eocene, irony, Anthropocene. That slight argument, because really this nomenclature argument, phenomenological argument is not really what I would like to dwell on. This really doesn't make some difference in terms of forming the anthropos, in terms of centering the anthropos. From the anthropos, the idea of anthropocene is somehow also located in. We would really not like to dwell on that. Did and to kind of make its return to Belism Rotary. Okay? And the term, Donna also proposes in the same book, and always does practically nothing is fruitful. Reconsidering this particular that we've been pushed into, and people also reconsidering how the human being can reimagine its existence in this current geological situation. As I've already mentioned the term earlier, Holocene. And Holocene, CHPHU, but Holocene, is the term that Harvey also poses in the same words. And then, before we just go into and therefore to Belism Rotary, so one certain famous while she was in Holocene, because as she goes on to say, well, I'm not really borrowing the term Hulu from witchcraft. This Hulu. Again, all of us really know Hulu. This the good character, this looking character. If you want to visit Hulu is the character, the fantasy character Hulu, created by Lovecraft. So, Donna Hare is a good move. Actually, darling, and since you are playing with spelling, mine is different. Mine is C, A-C. So it's not the same as Tulu. She says that I'm not from across Tulu. They say to me, am I really naming it after this particular spider? Tulu, this particular species of spider, which again with its ragged tentacular teeth and creepy, we'll go into the creepies and the trolleys in a minute. Anyways, the Donna effort, but suddenly she names Lucy after the name of the earth itself, Phoenix, from the idea of Phonos, rather than it's Tulu, the state of immortal, believer. Reason to presume that Dana was not even in the first place, influenced by these two pre-existing terms, Tulu, which she kind of almost readily borrows from. He said, again, a particular slight disclaimer in our possible discomfort with a disclaimer notwithstanding, that Dana say, and which kind of brings us back into the idea of the animal, and we will kind of go to the thousand petals, but to a different chapter altogether, is I feel this is a morpheus animal. We have these tentacles, free flowing tentacles, which kind of always bond, which kind of connections with, relationships with. That itself kind of brings us back. I love the animal studies itself, and the idea that human beings, especially these post-Anthropocenic, Paleocenic times, human beings has to root and feel. You know, don't have this very constant want to do. Probably that should come through certain levels. The gap that we necessarily presume human beings and animals and through certain connections. And these connections themselves, the tentacular connections, which I will necessarily dwell on in a minute, let's take a step backward again. Buddhism Guattari and thousand plateaus, thousand plateaus, and it is still, as you read, becoming animal, becoming imperceptible. So the title of chapter 10 of Buddhism Guattari is a thousand plateaus. Animal is a key phrase that one is kind of almost out from there, even in the title of my talk. Becoming animal doesn't become in isolation as the title of this particular chapter, because becoming animal is sandwiched between becoming between becoming imperceptible. What does animal mean? What is the whole idea of human beings being able to control themselves in so-called precious, very privileged human existence, existence, in animal terms? In the libertarian universe, as you know, becoming animal simply means to believe identity. Human beings is to necessarily presume privileged. What special qualities are in certain qualities necessarily demarcates us. Those others, these animals, and those qualities are very special, exceptional. We know and carry presumption and other identity markers also. We tend to believe that my linguistic chauvinist, I tend to believe language is exceptional. Identity marker is what I swear by. Religious chauvinist, I am believing in the religion being exceptional. Religious beliefs, I is we come to believe identity can be adhered to as a proven marker. All country, when it is open, I am discovering the very segregatory markers. Identity is impossible. Rather than is open to the possibility of magically, territorializedly. One of the possibility of discovering one's identity and knowing everyone getting of the other, forging bonds with the other. And that one is becoming animal. animal is not also components. It's not necessarily only becoming an animal. One will talk about becoming an animal in a minute. But nevertheless, animal not just becoming an animal, not just necessarily children with an animal, a human being, but rather this is still anthropic investment into identitarianism and being open to the possibility of fluidity, of nomadicity, of deterritorializedness, etc., etc. Animal and asking how then hold bonds with the animal, what becoming animal entail. So that I will kind of blunt directions. In a way, will take us back to what I did, or rather, I want to talk about usually tentacular connections. On the one hand, the idea, our very humanness, the way we sense human, and the way we conceive the existence, being a chosen category and something that makes itself different from the animal, also been shared with abandon. So George Clinton open man and animals, so that is abandon's book on the animal open. Precisely that's this very thing, which somehow historically we have always been dog emotions, which are the human beings, animals, the human beings are different animals. The separation further in trying to carve out the space, but that the spiritual animal that the human being is, and how, as he suggests, that now more and more in the current geopolitical situation, we see that we are once again this distinction between the man and the animal is dissolved. Let's say here lies having set in where the human beings are being relegated to what should be animal or even less of an animal status. And vice versa, where animals also are being open, being made open to human-like possibilities. Companion reading, so to say, rather than without becoming animal, be open and choose. We can once again think about this human distinction, how the distinction needs to be undone. Also, I mean, it takes probably all of you are familiar with this animal that therefore I am. And also, looking at a stat, this animal that therefore I am is a very simple, it's relatively easier to take than Deleuze Guattari or Abandon. It's kind of the same, that's the distinction. Almost very looking at a cat, reads this particular comes to the resolution that this animal that therefore I am. So the constant distinction, to cut a long story short, just like Deleuze and Guattari would have talked about, it's later, somewhat later, Deleuze and Adam would have talked about a similar thing, which is that somehow we draw this philosophical distinction between the human being and the animal, and we some sort of whirlwind on most of the human existence around. That distinction is unsustainable distinction anymore. The distinction needs to be undone, and rather we need to open ourselves possibility of transgressing these barriers and immediate forging bond with otherwise than human species, with non-human species, etc., etc. Now, let's break kinds of bonds. More importantly, what is again to be noted is that the same chapter 3 of 1,000 plateaus that I was talking about, which is 10,000 BC, is presented with this very image of a lobster. So, those images, 1,000 plateaus with me, the chapter 3 is a kind of frontispiece, if that is a word, with a photograph. It's a lobster. And it's this, there isn't really going to show that, going to show, going to say, now she will show that God is a lobster. But that is for a particular reason, for the strong belief that apparently lobsters cannot be killed when lobsters regularly die. But I think the space of time, like bonds, the human beings and animals need to forge amongst themselves. Study, but we cannot speak. If we have to really imagine our existence, if we current potential first human times of ours, it's the world is an absolute mode considering our existence, and just to think of transgressing those barriers and forging them animals. It's kind of a human established. Animals become say admitted in here, other things that are otherwise than human. bonds could they be? Shapes and human said Buddhism with this presentation of the lobster. Visualize the lobster. On the way describe the lobster, so to say. As you understand, any arthropod for that matter has an exoskeleton. Visualize the lobsters hard, rather hard. So, kind of grab you, there's certain punch you. What you would do is run ribs person. As you must understand, I'm moving to a victory. The tours, the tours, so to say. Yes, and big bonds. And even in friends, the field, the TV serial friends, you remember Phoebe famously talks about apparently Ross and Rachel were each other's lobsters because hold each other's so to say, and walk around. Potentially, apparently lobsters do that. So that's again a bit of knowledge. As it is, as I said a little while back, the lobsters never die unless apparently with a little lemon fish sauce perhaps, but nevertheless. So, knowledge lobster apparently for life and they hold each other's pincers and move around. It's a bit of knowledge, but nevertheless, it's bond. It's lobsters don't bond. Lobsters also used as a method of bonding. That bonding, a lot of bonding bound, really bonding, the elements that kind of play with each other. So that on the other hand, and he kind of seamlessly moved back, so to say, from Buddhism Gotari into Haraway. On the other hand, think of this appendages, those familiar, rooted, nature, slimy, rather people, and this kind of almost can send bonds within years. The bond goes as opposed to its answers have many bonding with, let's say, more than human animals. Versus tentacular, the slippery, which makes us move back into the idea of tentacularity, the idea of the tentacle that I have already mentioned very briefly, but also mentioned in my title. Idea is to bonds can we forge, trying to reimagine our existence. Slippery in nature, tentacular in nature, as Harry says. With tentacles remove itself. Being a rigid sort, this is second parafarma. Something flows to tentacles, flows, and flows in a way, even in a deliveritarian way, flows in rather indeterminable ways, in the ways also, precisely because they're indeterminable. In nature. We can contain species, we can make human, other than human species. It's empathy in nature, and this empathy thinking can forge these bonds. It's bonds, as you must understand, if we have to really conceive and really imagine human existence, these post-human times of ours, is restricted only to animals, or not restricted only to plants even, or things that are animate. So of animals or otherwise, of plants, we can perform the same tentacular function, so to say. We can perform bonds as opposed to tentacular bonds. But this also bring into account it is unique. We must also bring into account what is neural. Emotion animate, perfect animal. We need because one has to maybe almost go back to the geological argument that one was presenting, almost talk about human beings continuously forging these human bonds. What is cool? What is unique? Needless to say, however, in the earlier avatar, let's say a decade and a half before the words that I was currently talking about, the cyborg, the possibility of human subject forging bonds, forging machine assemblages. Again, borrowing a Telugu term, the forging machine assemblages with machines, with otherwise animate objects, and these are almost really testing one's ontology. However, in an earlier avatar, we talked about the cyber and technology. So, not only reimagining human existence, reimagining human existence is first human possibilities where the human being can actually have an assembly with a machine. And that is our own future self, reimagining existence in the first human times as a cyborg, as a cyborg assemblage. In short, I mean, we miss out on that. So, this was a convergence not only between human beings and animals, if it were otherwise, or even living plants, living beings, other living beings like plants, living beings, also assembly with machines, perhaps. These assemblages are somewhat tenuous. Space, the intrinsic notion of existence of being itself to realize the being. Ontological sort of context sort. Finding the selfhood. What's more important is just as a footnote, perhaps, because otherwise one would get too carried away into that. As a footnote, perhaps, one can also note the notion of technological singularity. So, it's more of a footnote. Something that Ray Kurzweil would have talked about, and someone like Werner, etc., would have theorized on. Technological singularity, as we know, is that even horizon already come, probably likely to come. Human machines are discernible. We are still one with each other, cyber with unpotential possibility of ours in the really designing existence of a really imagining existence of ours. Technological singularity is the even horizon. Machines and human beings are indiscernible. You won't even it. What does human being end where the machine start? Singularity is often been seen in rather dystopic terms. In the morning, also, we had some discussion to that effect, where machines will probably take over our existence. Seen in very utopic terms, that is, somehow these machine assemblies, these cyborgs, as our future ontology, would add a new altogether as to how we visualize our existence. Aside, what Harold also began to show, and which will make me move to the last term in the title of my talk, and which I would really kind of dwell upon a bit more philosophically about. So, which is, as Harold began to say, who is not comfortable with the term post-human? As she began to say, that's the term that we begin with. That's, you have to reimagine existence today. We have to talk about the post-human, about the post-human horizon. Haraway only have a reason precisely to theorize a post-humanism. She says that she's not comfortable with the term post-human. She says in post, she would rather talk about post. She would rather subscribe to that's post idea of decay, the idea of let's say, being made, being kind of distributed. And it is the idea of humans, because compost, as we understand, the idea of compost is when we die and we kind of, organic debris, when they get mixed with the earth, and become probably through the process of becoming rotten, becoming fertilizing of sorts. We can come to the fertilizer metaphor in a minute. Post, so as Harold began to show, this post is something that she should be identified with. Post, the possibility of human beings or organic matter, some of the end of it dying and decaying and kind of getting mixed with soil itself. Humus, we all know humus, H-U-M-U-S, humus, or the precisely rotten organic remains, which they're going to fertilize earth. Humus, and the idea of humus, post-humus now spelled with an O, O-U-S, in post-humus way, what's post-humanism? So I think that also brings back to the back door, perhaps, to the kind of altruistic sleight of hand that we saw earlier at work. It brings to the human subject somehow. This humanism will kind of enshrines the human in more criticized ways than one. Radical humanness. At Harris's, it attends some humanism that I am the subscribe to. It's one of the humans. Only a little dead. Posthumous beings, and even posthumous cells, posthumous cells, we humus, very post, and even very final is a kind of empty destiny is because you will already die and will also kind of become to one with the soil, disintegrated, decayed, and made into compost, made into what will be humus only. Lead us to therefore this most profound question that one needs to ask is, it began this crisis. My discussion today began with the crisis. Every time on the brink of a crisis, environmental disasters that we have ushered us into, we need human beings to bring the question of existence anymore. Decades. We try to manage the situation. We try to make so that we can kind of continue for a couple of more centuries, perhaps. So, this, go to a middle, one of it, we die, die. Prison, why did they make us live on? Bring on, be right. It's the better centuries, few holes here and there. Trying to kind of solve remedies, solve immediate problems. Species can continue to exist for a few more centuries. It continue to be damaged even for a few more centuries. Century, prior to the fact, die. It's not that this species before us have met their fate, have died, the earth has been here for a few million years. So waves of life cycles, where certain species have come to dominate the earth, and thereafter kind of doesn't extinct, cease to exist. Why do we actually hold on so dearly to life? Idea of living on, so that perhaps ourselves and the idea of existence, and to pushing the earth towards the precipice of disaster. On contrary, itself has that only deliverer unto us. On the contrary, ourselves, as I kind of admit to the argument that presented before you, itself is humorous, very composed, still to live on, to live at all costs. Aren't we on the contrary, once we think of sitting dinosaurs before us have now become fossil fuel and not to energize life forms. Well, can't we get reconciled to the fact that as human beings, we have our stay, we have had our leave of life on this planet Earth. Since we live in further, we are doomed to become extinct. It's embrace death itself, it's embrace that it's really imagining our existence terms of life itself, territory, composed, hummus, realizing generations to come, generations of species to come. Disaster when the ice caps would melt, and there's very little merit in us trying to resist that, in us trying to warn that off. When ice caps melt, when there's the next deluge, and we go extinct, the restart is not that more welcome, so to say, rather than into your life and living on at all costs. Very kindly, therefore, Heidegger, peace and candy. And it itself, and the idea of how being, the idea of being, for me, at the end of the day, as I do know, and there is no time here to really talk about Heidegger in any great detail. suppose one would just let it suffice and may I close my talk in the next couple of minutes just to not necessarily make an appeal to some kind of, let's say, mass suicide that we must drive ourselves towards so that all of us can become this insurance imposed hereafter. But let me close with don't mention to, as you would already know about Heidegger. Even this fits in towards this. So ultimately, as you know, for Heidegger, ultimately we are all, and this is commonsensical. Human continuously towards our death. There is no doubt about that. Possibility thinking of being us, I mean, I kind of thinking of us being as being completely implicated with others or the other such, do not necessarily see as being that kind of revelation, authenticity, versus possibility, with being all human in my life. It's not really, ultimately, it's not really time towards really very authentic experience I don't ever have. Alone to be the master of my own life, alone to be myself. And I do it probably done by someone else else on my behalf. Is it? Even someone else can die on my behalf and care for my death. Very authenticity, especially associates with and that being the ultimate appearance with given and possible revelation or authenticity. I didn't would have talked about. Question, however, is, and therefore to kind of bring things back up to a circle, to the work explained. And here in the one kind of advertising with which we must imagine our existence as posthumous. We imagine our existence as being already dead and already being driven towards death. We must naturally die. When we die, should this kind of reimagining our existence in terms of this unattainted desire of ourselves of becoming composed and becoming posthumous, finally somehow discovering our authentic self. That objective, I am really existence. There is no doubt about that. In the current situation where we are ecological, we are the edge of an ecological precipice. I am indeed talking about in this post-humanist times, we reimagine our existence, not in terms of trying to save the day and save the untroubled subject. There was embrace somewhat certain of all species becoming extinct, sooner or later. What objective am I talking about reimagining of existence? Objective, somehow, as I said earlier, are finally coming to you to the other. Are having become dead, having become composed, having become humus, having become fossil fuel, are used as beings in a distant future. That is and idealist, the book idea has horizon of reimagining existence in the contemporary time. However, in terms of I coming to you others, I finally kind of remember as the one to the others. Am I talking about the same thing, just ideally in a way, in terms of it's really else. Really self. Same thing as I've argued, the same idea of embracing death, death being seen as the horizon of reimagining one's existence, and serve different purposes. And death thought of as coming to help with health, very thought of as finally coming to help me myself in terms of me discovering my own authentic self. What is the thing? And most probably, the title of this particular conference, because it's not only about reimagining existence, but it's about reimagining existence too, in literature, particularly. Humbly, this is somewhat cool to take us out of this conundrum, perhaps. So, I've made the conundrum. So, the word conundrum. I want to reimagine existence in these post-humanistic times as posthumous. In terms of imagining existence as finally re-enshrining myself in terms of my authentic self, delivering me unto myself. Should I conceive dying as needing tiny delivery unto the other? So, as I said, this conundrum kind of gets resolved in my time discussion with the subject of this concern because somehow we have reached limited possibilities of this reimagining of existence. I must say that somehow the die is loaded towards the other. Maybe the scales are a bit towards the other. For the simple reason that ultimately literature and nothing it's Derridian funds notwithstanding, it's not because Derrida would have found literature as sorry, as in, in Sanskrit, also in all Indo-European language means other, even etymologically, other words are derived from it. So literature becomes literal. So, so to say, the connection will let to letter and the other this notwithstanding, even nonsensically, ultimately, as Abhishek Stock also earlier tried to suggest, ultimately communication itself, literally communication, when I somehow reach out to the other, out of one self-same shell, and somehow reach out to the other, to communicate to the other, to touch the other, even to effectively kind of feel sweeties and trolleys, to kind of touch them, and the scales or somehow transmitting language with the tools, would be the roots to which we would try to confront at least, would try to conceive of the reimagination of existence as it does. Presume I would leave it open-ended here because I would not know which of the two would it be. I presume that probably the likelihood of uh, us reimagining our existence in terms of us certainly dying and through that death, not really discovering ourselves in our authentic form, rather living ourselves perhaps millennia, perhaps, across centuries, perhaps, be a new world ever to come, as fossil fuel, as compost, as fertilizer, and therefore becoming somehow some to the other, maybe a more way of reimagining existence. Thank you very much for your patience, and it was a pleasure sharing some thoughts with you. And I would love to respond to queries, if any. Thank you.
A very good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for that enlightening session. Uh, I'm an from Mother University and research scholar. So my question is, if ultimately death is the ultimate thing, and something that we should look forward to and embrace death, then this whole question of saving the environment or not depleting resources, living a life where we don't cause much suffering and not living a selfish life, is it of no value then? Is my question. Like, should we just, because ultimately, if we are going to die, so what is the purpose of, let's say, not doing any harm?
Yeah. So challenge ecology will be very, very selfish. The whole idea of saving the environment so that our species can live on for a few more centuries, a few more decades. And kind of, let's say, again, as I said, so you must understand the difference between shallow ecology and deep ecology. The difference between ecology, perhaps. So, indeed, as you probably did not point that out, as indeed kind of quoting to some of the phrases that you raised in your question. So, you'll be able to kind of put in a few holes in the environment. That it's even indeed very, very selfish. So what are you doing it for? You're not doing it for saving the planet in the long run, but rather probably saving the run we have had, and this unbelievable run that we have had. And in the process, probably we just become damaging the environment even further. Indeed, shallow ecology is very, very selfish. Therefore, we turn the very phrases that we use in your question upside down, make it precisely the right side of the fact very especially the pollination and few of our species on this earth by a few more decades, and they were selfishly trying to kind of plug a few environmental holes here and there, and talking about sustainable energy, in a way that would be this kind of lead us to an even further vicious cycle of continuous energy depletion and resources depletion. Maybe it's almost self-truth to be and imagining of our existence. Reimagining ourselves in terms of following sustainable energy futures, but really not being much of reimagination at all. Continuing the way we do in terms of how much energy we continuously use, how much resources we continuously deplete, otherwise in a shallow way. And so that my submission is as to reimagine existence in times of ours, some tentacular bonding of species into one species, but also geological entities with the earth. What would do in years bonds into probably composed as becoming posthumously good beings that reimagining would indeed actually lend its life onto this earth. Maybe perhaps people would have gone. The planet would live on. And the thing would actually sprout new things of life for just 100,000 years, perhaps. Our species still trying to, in short, it is a sustainable future for us, in us humans dying at the earliest and ceasing to be a species at the earliest. That would be really selfless on our part.
Thank you for enlightening talk, sir. Just one short question. Is this desire to become compost, is it necessarily an altruistic attitude that we require for, is it altruistic attitude like we should have to something?
Yeah, and that is I raised both these possibilities at the end, and I kind of said it's a conundrum. I'm not sure whether it's altruistic or not. That is one possibility. That's my peaceful existence unto death could indeed have possible altruistic motivation. That is, having kind of exercise my authentic being coming to be used to others, by becoming compost, by becoming fertilizers. I'm sure that is the only driving principle. And this is the way of the Heidegerian possibility also. Definitely end up privileging as being authentic means of someone I'm being able to relive existence unto me. In the country to make it banal in a way, to make it kind of simplistic in a way, not involved. So this whole connection of life and death. The company is I know itself further. So to answer your original question, and more it death being the means of reimagining existence in post-humanistic time is altruistic. I'm sure about that. And it's selfish in terms of me trying to realize my authentic self, etc. To come further, feels a rather selfish desire. That is, I've been almost writing this obituary of the human race, and I think deciding that's precisely what this conference also wants to do. My entire argument was also aimed to it. I'm not really comfortable showing away the alien altogether. Even trying to presume I would fertilize new species. I'm still in having a remember the fossil period. I molecules will try to still use to some species a few 100,000 years later. Anyways, that potential evil mind kind of wants to stamp its mark onto posterity. So even altruism is somewhat selfish. A selfless way of reimagining existence? Probably not, because then one thing trying to reimagine existence, we would probably reimagine non-existence. So, the day, as as we may reimagine existence through death, altruistically or selfishly, this of selfishness, of anthropocity, still lying there somewhere. Even if we conceive of all kinds of tentacular bondings, we undo to becoming animal, we undo the very barriers that separate us in an identitarian manner. Right. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening rendering of ecology. But, sir, my doubt is whether the, demar- the demarcating line between shallow ecology and deep ecology very clear and prominent, or that is a blurred line, because to become about ecology.
Yeah. I think I've got the question. So the question is for those who may not have heard him. So, is the fault line between shallow ecology and deep ecology that prominent, or is it a blurred line? It seems to be a question. It's blurred because ultimately, what constitutes shallowness and what constitutes depth also contextually vary, perhaps. But there is a certainty. That's correct. I think it goes to the previous question that was asked. That is, if shallowness is being defined in terms of a certain kind of a very confusing selfishness, that is ultimately I'm shallow only insofar as I want to plug those holes that somehow will come to my immediate use. Whereas deep ecology is where I deeply try to conceive of the deep damage that I may have done, and therefore I'm not really interested in this managing the situation. So, demarcation is there. But as was pointed out, no demarcation between what's actually selfish and what is not. It's so subjective. On many levels, one, certainly the lines are blurred. Contingently, what may be shallow and what may be selfish, may be very altruistic to someone else, etc., etc. A level, at a mythological level, lines not that blurred. And wherein everything is also brought in ideas, that is two ideas, in case one has missed out the point. So one is the idea of ecosophy, and the other is the idea of geology. And this is the Anthropocene, and therefore further supplemented through ideas like the Thulucene. So where the line may not be that blurred, this ecosophy as something philosophical of such to make environmental wisdom the very sacred what our wisdom can say. It's hypocritical. So the line is not blurred at all, because some environmental wisdom, uh, if environmental wisdom, I can step a little back from the mic, or maybe I can even speak without the mic, perhaps. If environmental wisdom has to be straight of all our rather than we invoking environmental wisdom for the purpose of solving any particular environmental crisis, then that particular line is not too clear. So there it doesn't get blurred. Similarly, invoke the idea of geology. Really surface and big, not too blur, because I have the troposphere. As I said, I mentioned the spheres already: troposphere, biosphere, atmosphere, and pretty much on the sun. Whereas if I'm really kind of digging deep, as we were with the Professor Challenger's story, and wherein therefore we go on to make anthropocenic geological changes unto the earth, that this model in geology makes the difference between what is shallow and what is deep not that clear, because digging deep is deep, whereas roaming on the surface is roaming on the surface. So indeed, the distinction between the two is not blurred when we only from the person television birth culture. It's probably not that blurred if we think either philosophical or theological. Because wherein the shallow and deep models, it's indeed two prominent strata of the layers that emerge in our consciousness. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. I really appreciate your insight and presence here today. I request the reporter, Dr. Zazira Gabin, to please deliver a short report on the talk. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Professor Vladimir, this is the first time I got a chance to listen to his enlightening speech. Thanks to XID for giving me the opportunity to listen to Dr. Vladimir for the first time. Um, I'm going to connect what he said in very lucid language. I do not know whether I'm supposed to do that. But well, Dr. Vladimir began by raising objections to the term patriotism, which can be described as plugging the holes of a sinking ship so that we might be able to live maybe a few decades and a few centuries more. He calls shallow ecology. It refers to use the term ecozophy, which is more than ecocriticism. It is environmental consciousness. He also prefers the term ecology and opposed to shallow ecology. Ecology, human beings have not only impacted the surface of the earth, but the earth is at the geological levels, right at the center. Human beings have altered the geological makeup of the earth. It argues that Anthropocene is a questionable view of looking at ecology. Anthropocene may have begun right through the Ice Age and has continued through the agricultural age up to the nuclear age. He introduces the term Anthropocene, which talks about forging connections with animals, plants, and even inanimate objects. Becoming animals, which is raising identity. Identity is not a frozen marker. It should be dissolved into forms of fluidity so that there is no distinction between humans, animals, and even inanimate objects. It talks about the classic distinction between humans and animals being related and about the possibilities of forging bonds with other than humans. And the kinds of bonds talks about are the lobster bond, which is a pincer model, and the tentacular bond, the tentacular bond, which is not limited to human beings and human and animal alone, but it can bond human with plants. It talks about forging machinic bonds with inanimate objects and possible technological singularity. Human beings and machines would become indiscernible when there is technological singularity. Talks about posthumanism and prefers to use the word posthumous. And from that, posthumous means uh, human beings being converted to the human state, the organic state after decaying and mixing up with the earth. And then it comes to the term posthumous, which talks about final destiny and being one with the soul. So whereas shallow interpreticism or shallow ecology talks about holding on to their life, ecology, and Emerson talks about association of life and realizing that that's the only authentic experience of life. I hope we've covered all the points. Thank you so much, sir, for your encouragement. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, ma'am. I will now request Dr. P.V. Padma to please comment at the dais and present a memento to Professor Bhaduri as a token of our respect and appreciation. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We will now we will now move on to parallel session 4, tracks A, B, C, D, and E, which will be happening in venues nearby. Track A will be happening in this venue, so I request all the presenters for track A to kindly stay back. Track B will be happening in Seminar Hall 4, Track C in Seminar Hall 5, Track D and E will be online sessions. Student volunteers may guide you to your respective venues and resolve any queries that you may have. After the parallel session, we will be taking a short break for tea in discussion hall 1, and we will meet back in this venue at 4:50 for the valedictory session. We wish all the presenters the best and look forward to insightful discussions.